Most people believe they are in control of their minds. They believe their thoughts are theirs, their opinions are theirs, and their choices are theirs. But what if I told you that most of your beliefs were shaped long before you ever questioned them? And what if I told you that your emotions, your decisions, your preferences, and even your identity can be influenced without you noticing? This is not about conspiracy theories. This is about the real psychological mechanisms that shape human behavior every single day. Mechanisms built into the brain. Mechanisms that advertisers use. Mechanisms that political groups use. Mechanisms that social networks use. And mechanisms that ordinary people use without even realizing it. In this video, we're diving deep into the hidden architecture of psychological control, the subtle forces that shape your reality, the invisible hands that guide your decisions, and most importantly, how to break out of them. Let's begin. We like to think that our thoughts arise from logic, from reason, from intelligence. But neuroscience paints a very different picture. Most of your thoughts are automatic. They come from habits, shortcuts, and emotional reactions. Your brain loves efficiency. It wants to conserve energy, so it takes the quickest path possible when making judgments. The truth is that the brain rarely thinks deeply unless it is forced to. And because of this, it becomes incredibly easy to steer. Let me show you how it works. First, your brain relies heavily on something called cognitive ease. If a thought feels easy, familiar, or comfortable, the brain assumes it is true. If a thought feels difficult, complicated, or unfamiliar, the brain assumes something is wrong. This means that the simplest message wins. The catchiest slogan wins. The most repeated idea wins. Not the most accurate one. Not the most logical one. Not the most intelligent one. This is why misinformation spreads faster than truth. Truth is usually complicated. Lies are conveniently simple. Your brain loves simple. Next, your brain uses anchoring. The first version of a story you hear becomes the anchor for everything that comes after. Even if the first version is wrong, even if the correction is stronger, your brain remembers the original and forgets the correction. This is called the belief echo. You might forget the facts, but you remember the feeling the story gave you. And that feeling becomes your truth. Your brain also loves patterns, even when patterns don't actually exist. This creates illusions of causation and illusions of meaning. Your brain thinks it is analyzing reality, but it is actually filling in gaps with assumptions. And perhaps the most surprising truth is this: your brain does not care if your thoughts are accurate. It only cares if your thoughts feel coherent. Feeling right is more important than being right. This is the illusion of independent thought. A mind that feels like it is thinking freely, but is actually reacting automatically. Now we go deeper. Because the moment your brain attaches something to your identity, the game changes completely. Your identity is one of the strongest forces in your psychology. Once you say, "I am this kind of person," or "people like me do this," your brain begins to filter reality to protect that identity. It becomes harder to question your own beliefs, harder to admit mistakes, harder to update your thinking. Not because of logic, but because of identity protection. This is why brands try to turn customers into tribes. It is why political groups use identity-based language. It is why influencers use phrases like "my people," "my community," and "my tribe." The moment you feel like you belong, your defenses drop. Identity creates blind spots. For example, when you join a group, your brain starts interpreting group behavior as correct. Not because it is correct, but because it feels consistent with who you are now. Groups shape identity. Identity shapes perception. Perception shapes reality. Another form of identity engineering is the parasocial bond. You can feel connected to a creator, celebrity, or influencer, even if they do not know you exist. Your brain treats them as familiar, trustworthy, safe. This bond can shape your beliefs, your purchasing decisions, your values, even your worldview. This is why influencers can sell out products instantly. Your brain isn't just responding to a message. It is responding to an identity bond. Identity is a psychological handcuff. Unless you learn to loosen it, it can be used to control you. Now let's talk about emotions. Because your emotions are the doorway to your decisions. Human beings like to think they make rational choices. But the truth is the opposite. Emotions make the decision first, and logic shows up afterward to justify it. This is why emotional conditioning is one of the most powerful forms of control. Emotional conditioning is simple. Expose someone to the same emotion repeatedly, paired with the same trigger, and they will begin to respond automatically. This is how advertisers train you to associate happiness with a product. How social media trains you to chase dopamine. How fear-based messaging conditions anxiety responses. How past trauma conditions threat responses. And the brain does not ask for permission. It reacts instantly. Fear is the easiest emotion to manipulate. It bypasses rational thinking. It narrows your attention. It makes you look for danger even when none exists. Fear makes you compliant. On the other side, dopamine is used to hook you. Notifications, likes, reels, short-term rewards. Your brain gets addicted to quick hits of stimulation. The more dopamine you chase, the less discipline you have. And the less discipline you have, the easier it is to influence your behavior. Emotion is the steering wheel of the mind. Whoever controls your emotions controls your decisions. Framing is one of the most underestimated forms of psychological control. The frame of a story determines the meaning of the story. Two people can hear the same fact, but if the framing changes, the entire emotional impact changes. For example, a product can be framed as 90% effective or 10% ineffective. It is the same information, but one frame creates confidence. The other creates doubt. The news uses framing constantly. They decide what to highlight, what to downplay, what to repeat, what to ignore. They frame what you should care about. They frame what you should fear. And they frame what you should believe matters. Framing works because the brain latches on to first impressions. Once a narrative is framed, your brain uses it as the filter for everything that follows. The frame becomes the truth, even if the facts change. This is how framing shapes your worldview, not by changing information, but by changing meaning. Change the frame and the truth changes with it. Humans are social creatures. Even the strongest individuals are influenced by group behavior. This makes social conformity one of the most powerful forms of psychological control. The Ash experiments show that people will deny what they see with their own eyes if enough people disagree. Not because they believe the group is right, but because they fear being isolated. The truth becomes less important than belonging, and belonging becomes the currency that controls behavior. The false consensus effect makes you believe that your group's behavior represents what most people believe, even when it does not. This reinforces your worldview. It makes you confident you are right, and it makes you less likely to question yourself. Group identity also reduces moral judgment. A person may behave in ways they would never do alone, but in a group, they feel protected, justified, even righteous. Groups shape morality. Groups shape beliefs. Groups shape behavior. No one escapes social pressure. The only difference is whether you see it working on you or not. Now we get into one of the most subtle forms of control, the illusion of choice. Most of the choices you face were curated for you, structured for you, presented in ways designed to create a predictable outcome. The store layout decides what you see first. The app design decides what you click. The default settings decide what you agree to. The algorithm decides what information you receive. The environment decides what you want. When choices are engineered, freedom becomes a performance. you feel like you are choosing, but the structure guides your decision. This is the basis of nudge theory. A gentle push in the direction someone wants you to go. Not a command, not a demand, just a nudge. Nudges bypass resistance because they feel like your own choice. This is the most effective form of control, the kind you do not notice. Your worldview is not built all at once. It is shaped gradually, story by story, emotion by emotion, reaction by reaction. Your worldview is influenced by your culture, your parents, your community, your peers, your political environment, your media diet, your trauma, your emotional history, your identity, and your memories. Most of these influences were absorbed without your awareness. They form the lens through which you interpret reality. Two people can see the same event and interpret it completely differently because their worldviews were shaped differently. This means that the world you think you live in may not be the same world someone else is experiencing. Your reality feels objective, but it is constructed, and every construction can be influenced. Awareness is the ultimate weapon. When you understand the mechanisms of control, they lose their power. They no longer slip into your mind unnoticed. Here are the most powerful ways to break free. First, practice cognitive diffusion. This means creating distance between you and your thoughts. You observe them instead of obeying them. You question them instead of believing them automatically. Second, build emotional regulation buffers. A calm mind is harder to manipulate than an anxious one. People with emotional stability see through manipulation faster. Third, question your identity regularly. Ask yourself, why do I believe this? Who taught me this? Is this belief actually mine? Or did I inherit it? Fourth, diversify your information diet. The more perspectives you absorb, the harder it is for one narrative to control you. Fifth, slow down your decisions. Manipulation relies on speed. If you pause, reflect, and analyze, the influence loses power. Sixth, reframe the stories you hear. If someone frames a narrative for you, create a counterframe. Ask what the message would sound like from a different angle. Seventh, practice intellectual humility. You can't be manipulated through overconfidence if you stay curious. Curiosity makes you flexible. Flexibility makes you free. Breaking free from control does not mean rejecting everything around you. It means becoming conscious of what is influencing you. Once you see the system, you are no longer inside it. Your thoughts are shaped. Your emotions are influenced. Your beliefs are conditioned. Your worldview is constructed. But none of this is a weakness. It is simply how the human mind works. The real strength comes from awareness, from learning to notice the invisible forces that guide you, from taking back control of the choices that make you who you are. The more you understand your mind, the harder it becomes for anyone to control it. If you want a part 4 diving even deeper into the psychology of influence, persuasion, and mental autonomy, let me know in the comments. And as always, like, subscribe, and stay curious. Your mind is worth protecting.